Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pies Presser, where we talk anything and everything and provide you an update on all the latest Collingwood news. And there is quite a bit to go through tonight. We have news that is come to light about Zack Butters seeking or potentially garnering attention from Victorian clubs as they attempt to lure him home in his second final year, not his final year, which is next year. We're also going to dissect the Pies or the Fly presser. I was going to say the Pies presser. We're going to dissect the Fly's press conference from today. There were some really interesting quotes from there, so we'll dive deep into that and extend that conversation into the comment section. From there, we'll provide an injury update, talk about some of the players' names that are floating around regarding selection. And then we'll go into we talked about an injury update. We'll talk about doing a predicted lineup. And then lastly, we will do our tips for the week. Did not have a great week on the cards in regards to tipping, nor did I have a great run in Supercoach. So don't look at me as an example to follow upon when it comes to tipping and Supercoach. I will lose you a lot of games, tips, and money if that is up for stake. So we shall get in to the Pies presser, starting with Zack Butters. Let's have a look at this article here that came out, posted by Sam McClure late last night. So Sam McClure says, Port Adelaide vice-captain Zack Butters is emerging as a key domino in the upcoming trade period, with several Victorian clubs recently becoming aware of his potential availability despite being contracted until the end of next year. So his potential availability, becoming aware of that. So reading into that line there, without going into the depths of this article just yet, it seems like with the way the club is trending at the moment, maybe the transition with the coach, has been a lot of media spin around that. And then you throw in the fact that they're not really performing as well as they had been, at least early on this year, relative to preliminary finalist side that they were last year. That might be a little bit concerning. And when you're on the sidelines nursing an injury, that's when you have all the opportunity to consider where you are, where you belong, and where the club's at, and whether that aligns with your goals, and whether you guys are sharing the same timeline. So there's a lot to play out there. Having grown up in Bacchus Marsh and playing for the Western Jets in the Coates Talent League at under 18 level, there is certainly a play there and a lure and an alluring idea to come back home and play for one of the big Victorian clubs. He's only 24 years old. I'm pretty sure he's a co-captain or he's in the leadership team for Port Adelaide. So he does hold some really good characteristics within his game and as a player. And for a club like Collingwood, we want to bring those types of people in, and he is a serious hard nut, but we'll keep diving into this article as we get further along with it. So knowledgeable sources at Port Adelaide who are not able to speak publicly about the matter said the club was confident of retaining him. I feel like I heard that about Zack Butters in the offseason last year, but anyways, we move. While Port is adamant it has ample salary cap space to afford to offer him a significantly increased pay packet, Butters, a two-time All-Australian, is open to exploring a trade at the end of this season, 12 months before he will become a restricted free agent. So let me paint this picture for you when it comes to understanding his contract. He's served the club he's in his 8th year of service. Next year, he will be a restricted free agent. So hypothetically, if he doesn't get traded during this season, you go into a situation where you offer him a contract as a club at the end of next year. Port Adelaide have an opportunity to match it. If they match the contract, then a trade would be forced. However, if they weren't to match the offer, they would just take compensation, but you wouldn't do that in a situation for a player like Zack Butters, who really, you're not getting him at this point of his career for anything less than 2 first-round draft picks. You know, you've seen players like Dan Houston and Bailey Smith go for less. I think this is the type of player who's probably a caliber above both. And you'd be very stiff if you're Port Adelaide, especially after what you lost in Dan Houston. I mean, you've already got Jack Lacosius on the sidelines. You've taken a salary hit by accepting Gold Coast offloading Rory Atkins. They got Joe Richards, who, yes, is a good player and he's nifty, but small forwards like Joe Richards, I say this as respectably as possible, they are a dime a dozen. So they certainly would feel that they were underdone or they were underwhelmed with the outcome of the trade, but it is what it is. They get a first round pick along with that as well. So who knows what they do with that? I think that's the 2025 first round pick that they have up their sleeve. So I'm not sure if they have 2 first round draft picks available in this upcoming trade period or the draft period as well. So we'll see what happens there. But that's what happens if he gets to the back end or the final year of his contract. However, if he remains at, or if he chooses to exercise a potential move back to Victoria at the end of this year, there's one way or no other way. It's this way or the highway, should I say. Collingwood can come forth with a trade option and present that to Port Adelaide. But if Port Adelaide say no, then Zack Butters has no other choice but to remain at the club. Now, you can say Dan Houston had 3 or 4 years on his contract. Is there any exception to that sort of situation? I mean, could have Port kept Dan Houston? Yes, they could have said, Dan, fair enough, you want to leave, but you're under contract, mate, and you have to stay. Perhaps the player agency that was representing Dan Houston amongst this all had used leverage to manipulate this scenario that transpired between the two clubs. Perhaps they said, look, if you don't give up Dan Houston, then it's going to hurt you in future negotiations. Maybe the Dan Houston management group already support players that play at Port right now, or there's players that Port are looking to adding to their squad in the future, then maybe they've used that as an upper ground. But I feel like with Zack Butters, that's not going to be an acceptable situation, an outcome for Port Adelaide. It's either a really auspicious trade comes about at the end of this year, and it has to be so good that they can't say no, or Zack Butters will have to honour that final year next year, and then he can consider moving them. But it sounds like he's going to leave at some point, whether it's this year or the next. Would it be Collingwood? Would it be another club? I'm not too sure. Collingwood are a part of the conversation. We can dive into what we can offer him to get him down, but we'll get there in a moment. Port Adelaide would like to extend Butters' contract beyond 2026 now, but neither the player nor his management group have indicated they will be open to that conversation yet. And that should be a grave concern for Port Adelaide, in my opinion. I mean, Butters doesn't have to do anything more this year to prove what he's worth. I'm sure Butters, and as the previous paragraph suggested, Port have ample salary cap space to give him a big pay packet. But if he's not willing to engage now, then what does that say? It only points towards further consideration for his management group and himself to look at other and explore other club opportunities. That's what it seems like to me. He's managed by Capital Sports and he's recently changed managers within the company from Mark Kleiman to Peter Lenton. So I'm not sure if there's anything to read into there. Maybe you guys know a little bit more about both of those player agents. I'm not sure what the move entails there. Butters, a loved and respected teammate and person at Port Adelaide, has an extremely close relationship with outgoing coach Ken Hinkley, who will officially hand over the reins to Josh Carr at the end of the season. So that's another key pillar that is going to stumble as we get closer to the back end of the year. Who knows? Maybe Ken Hinkley, yes, while he's stepping down, does he go to a club as an assistant coach or plays or coaches in one of the positional departments, midfield, defense, forward? Who knows what he becomes? Does he want to go into recruitment and then find himself at a club where he can attract someone like Zack Butters? Maybe that's something that gets old mate Zack over the line to another club. So that's another thing that's working against Port Adelaide right now. Insiders at Port Adelaide said Butters had other strong relationships at the club, but conceded that he and Ken Hinkley had a special bond, and the rival clubs may attempt to use the coach's pending departure as leverage to lure him back to Victoria, which is exactly what we just spoke about. Butters is yet to play this year after having surgery for a minor knee injury in February, but the Power are hopeful he'll return this week against St Kilda. He watched from the stands as his Port Adelaide teammates suffered a shock loss to Essendon last Thursday night at Marvel Stadium, and boy, didn't they look horrendous. I mean, Essendon didn't look amazing, and they were still beaten by them. They need Zack Butters. He's the heart and soul of the club. Like, while he has immense polish about his game, he's also just hard at it, and one of those players you just cannot replace. Similar to Braden Maynard, obviously a caliber above, though. He completed a strong running session in Melbourne on Friday morning with Port Adelaide staff and stayed in Victoria to see family before flying back to Adelaide on Sunday. Port believe that at the very least, Butters will remain at the club until the end of 2026. We'll see what the end of this year has to say about that. I imagine it, and this is a quote by Chris Davies, who is the football boss at Port Adelaide. He said, I imagine at this point he's going to be a restricted free agent, so we've got control of that situation anyway. So he's just suggesting that they have the upper hand when it comes to any negotiations over the next 2 years. But there's no doubt that Zack is going to get paid. So he's just insinuating or implying that there's an opportunity to get a really big bag from Port Adelaide for Zack. If there are clubs who are providing inflationary pressures to others, that gets well known pretty quick. For the teams desperate to land players, sometimes if they don't, it's not overly helpful because it does create some inflationary pressure across the competition we've all got to deal with. So this is Chris Davies alluding to, you look at St Kilda, who are offering TDK and Finn Callahan really big contracts, and then with the unlikelihood of these types of players joining these clubs who aren't destination clubs, it inflates that specific market for those players if they were to go elsewhere. So it is it's a tricky situation to navigate around when it comes to the business side of things. Hawthorn, who have Carlton's first round pick in the upcoming draft, have made it no secret they want to add to their midfield depth. The Hawks also have a war chest of money, given how even their playing list is and how many players are performing above their contract. Richmond and Essendon both have 2 first-round picks this year. The Tigers have their own and North Melbourne's, while the Bombers have their own and Melbourne's first-round pick. It's conceivable they could both end up with 2 top 10 picks. Richmond's number 1 pick from last year's draft, emerging star Sam Lawler, also hails from Bacchus Marsh. Interesting. Davies adds to his radar interview saying, we've got no restrictions around keeping the players that we wanting to keep. Our salary cap has been well managed over the time. We certainly have the money if we want to keep the players who are out of contract. So you got players like Farrell as well, Miles Bergman, who is looking really good this year. I hear there's whispers that he may get to St Kilda. I think he's got a couple close mates there, so that will be interesting to see how that pans out. Zack Butters will certainly be a player that we'll want to keep when the time comes. With where the dollars are going in AFL, all of those guys are going to get paid, and fair play to them because they've all performed well. And the final line in this article is Sam McClure adding that Capital Sports have declined to comment. So read that how you see that. That's another interesting no comment from a player agency that is representing Zack Butters at this time. So, yeah, a bunch of information there to dive into. As far as what Collingwood can offer, bearing in mind we have Thomas McGuan, which we will need draft capital. It would be extremely, extremely unlikely to acquire the likes of Tom McGuan and Zack Butters in the same period, in the same year. However, next year would be a different conversation with the ability to utilize 2 future first-round picks 2 years in advance, plus the current year that gives you a bit more flexibility in being able to get these big players to your club. We bear in mind we may lose a Braden Maynard, and we would probably be compensated for a first-round draft pick there. So it sort of brings us back into that conversation of potentially getting someone like Zack Butters over to the club. But with Hawthorn having 2 first-round draft picks available and how well they're doing, they're obviously the destination club. They've just recently had chats with Oscar Allen, I think Sam Mitchell flew over to Perth over the last coming days, and one of the things he needed to do there was have a meeting with Oscar Allerin. So that's a very interesting one there, isn't it? Let's catch up. Stephanos, how are you? Steve-O, how you going? Champ said last week Pies were chasing Butters since last Brownlow night. Did you? I don't remember, but not sure if we can get him across the line. Have no picks for it. Yeah. Look, it's one of those ones where this year would be extremely unlikely. However, next year we'd have more leg room. Unless Bo McCreary wants to go home. I don't think Bo McCreary necessarily warrants a first-round draft pick. Like I said, you need to give Port Adelaide something that is equivalent to two first-round draft picks, if it isn't exactly that. Rather Matt Rao, though. Peter says Butters is going to be Houston. Aussie Gamer. Oh, Kynan. Champs. What's going on? Sean says next premiership midfield, Rao, Dacos, and Butters. What's good? That's the dream, but it's kind of, yeah, that's an extremely unlikely hypothetical, but we can all dream and hope. Peter G says we weren't supposed to get Houston, so maybe we can pull another rabbit out of the hat. Hey, stranger things have happened. That's why we'll never count that one out. McGuan on the wing. Yeah, I think, Sean, with McGuan coming into the team next year, he'll probably be a winger. He's more of an outside player right now. I'm just getting through watching some McGuan footage, so I'm hoping to provide some sort of report at some point. I actually just want to double check something. Bear with me for a moment. Oh, never mind. Okay. Ben Parsons says he'd be nice to have, but I think Port would offer a good contract to keep Zack. That's fine, all well and good, but it seems like he's not going to stay. It's his choice at the end of the day, or at least that is the case next year. This year is going to be very hard to not swindle him, because it sounds like he doesn't need much swindling to come across to Victoria, where he's formerly from. It's just a matter of how do you convince Port Adelaide letting go another dual All-Australian? Like, you'd be absolutely spewing as a Port fan if you lose someone like Zack Butters. Chris Talbot, how you going? Peter G says Butters will want to trade at the end of the year. Nothing surer. It's the end of a chapter at Port, and he will want to start a new chapter. Question is, Peter, I mean, you don't have to be a guru to look at Collingwood's list. And while we are competitive right now, we might be competitive for the next couple of years. Maybe Zach's thinking, I want to walk into a side that is dynasty bound. And sides that look dynasty bound right now are teams like Hawthorn, potentially Adelaide. That's the early crow. But you could maybe add Brisbane or Gold Coast. Although Brisbane and Gold Coast, Queensland sides, it depends. Like, it sounds like Zack Butters wants to come home. He doesn't want to leave from one foreign state to another. Rick says Port has to trade him this year to get a better deal. Otherwise, they'll only get one compensation pick next year. I think there's a chance with restricted free agency where you can get compensation in the way of 2 draft picks. It wouldn't be 2 first-round draft picks, though. It'd be 1 and then maybe a second rounder, I think. Don't quote me. However, you'd like to think even in his final year next year, at the very least, with the compensation, you lose nothing less than a first-round draft pick. So you gain 1 first-round draft pick. But I think some club is going to come to the party and offer 2 first-round draft picks. Now, remember what I said, Rick, with the new rules behind accessing first-round draft picks. Say we're in 2025 now, right? So Hawthorn have 2 first-round draft picks available right now. They could also use next year's. Maybe not the next year. Potentially they could, depending, because you have to use 2 first-round picks every 4 years. So it gets a bit tricky there. But we certainly don't have the best draft capital to put forward the best offer that Port would like to receive. Reedy the Great says, love your work, mate. These lives are awesome. Mate, you guys help me go a long way with these streams. I will say, I come with the content and some initial ideas, but the fact that you guys are willing to contribute helps us extend this conversation. If I'm just reading news and then I come back to the comment section and there's nothing to rebound off, then these streams would be very dull. So that's a little nudge to you guys. If you are watching these streams and aren't contributing much, that's fine. Totally fine. But also, don't be hesitant to jump in and say something. I'd love to see your comments and your thoughts and your perspectives, because it adds to this conversation. I do my best after once I'm done with every topic. I might not respond for 5 or 10 minutes. And once I'm done with that said topic, I'm going to come back and address as many as possible. Some I'll skip over simply because I've literally just repeated I've already answered what that question was bringing to me. Chris Talbot asks, any updates on Oscar Allen coming to Collingwood next year? Well, like I said just before, he's had meetings with Sam Mitchell. There's interest from Collingwood. It's West Coast is all up in arms right now. I mean, the instability behind the Harley Reid situation. Oscar Allen's obviously not performing well, but I guarantee you, I don't even look at his form and say and judge that based on. I don't judge his caliber of quality based on his form right now, just because you're a recipient of how well the ball movement is going or heading towards your forward line. And with Jake Waterman out, other teams don't really have anyone else to worry about other than Oscar Allen. So I don't think it's disrespectful what they did on the weekend. They moved him in the back half in the final quarter. I thought that was, you want to get something out of the game. Being the captain, you want to have some sort of impact. And if it's not coming your way, yes, he lost some one-on-one contests that maybe should have been more competitive in. I just think at the same time, you've got to find ways to bring your best players in. And if it means moving Oscar Allen to the back line when you aren't getting many inside 50s or quality looks going inside 50 and you're under duress as a defensive unit, why not? Why not put him there? I don't mind it. I think that's an overreaction, but it doesn't help. It certainly accentuates the media spin that is occurring in the West right now. Stephanos says we offer Hinkley an assistant coaching job and bring Butters over to the Pies. Yeah, that would be huge, wouldn't it? Because who have we got now in the coaching department? You've got Fly McRae, you've got Lepich, who's no longer in there. He's in the recruitment side of things, but you've got Boydie, who is the midfield coach. You've got Rufford, who is the defensive coach, and the forward coach is Scott Scooter Selwood. Who's our guys? Is there an assistant coach that's completely just gone over my head potentially? Let me know. Chris, no update on Brazzy at the moment. Jay Wilson says, mate, would give my left nut for Butters. Let's have a look at some of his stats, because what he's been able to do at Port in his young budding career, he was drafted at the end of 2018. He's played 119 matches, 67 career goals. What stands out to me, before we get into the stats, what stands out to me the most about Zack Butters is just how hard at it he is, both at training, that's well documented, and how hard he goes at it in game. Like, we just don't have a player like that. He's that hard at the ball and is still a good ball user and just wins a load of the footy. So let's see. His last year, he played all 26 matches, so he's durable, despite the fact that he's always putting himself in the toughest of positions when it comes to the contest. Obviously, he's injured right now. We'll give him a mulligan over that one. But over the last 2 years, he's had over 185 coaches' votes. He averages 27 disposals over the last 2 seasons. What else springs out to me? 10 contested possessions a game is a nice balance. He averages about just under 38% contested possession rate. So out of the 27 disposals that he gets, 38% of them are contested. That's a nice little split. Shows that you are an inside and out player. He's a hard ball getter, loose ball getter. So inside and out, as I just mentioned. Spends a bit of time in the forward line, I believe, as well. Like, he's not a full-time midfielder. He's averaged 60% midfield time over the last 2 seasons. So he goes forward and he kicks goals. Half a goal a game. Can he bump that up to 1 if he comes to Collingwood? You'd imagine he'd be more versatile, and like much of how we depend on our system at Collingwood, we depend on these players to be versatile and excel in other domains. Averages half a goal assist a game, and and nearly 7 score involvements as well, which is well above average. It's not, I wouldn't say it's elite as a midfielder. I think elite as a midfielder when it comes to score involvements in 2024, you're probably looking at 10 score involvements a game. And I think players that are high in that are players like Isaac Heaney, Chad Warner, of course, Marcus Bontempelli. Let's see, score involvements. Okay, sorry. So last year, the highest scoring involvement player was Bontempelli, 8.2. So 6.7, 6.9, where Zack Butters stands, gets you into the top 15 players who find themselves in the most chains of score involvements. For those who are wondering, Nick Dacos is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th in line behind Bontempelli, Petrarca, Isaac Heaney, Jeremy Cameron, Brayshaw, and then Nick Dacos. So they're just out of interest for you guys there. Let's go here. Back to the comments. Paul Mackay says, the only way we get Butters is if Maynard leaves and we get a first-round compensation pick and either a first-round pick for Hill or Cameron if they want to go home to Western Australia. Another really good point there, Paul. I did mention the Maynard compensation, but I failed to recall that Hill or Cameron may or may not be leaving, going back home to Western Australia. That's another situation where we do have some leg room to utilize some trade capital if we do see them off back to Western Australia. So thanks for bringing that up, Paul. Fowler was re-signed yesterday. Okay. Thank you, Peter. Yep, Paul says we also need points for Thomas McGuan, who could go first round. Yep, that's something that doesn't make our life easy. That's why I think even with like the Darcy Camerons, the Bobby Hills, and the Braden Maynard compensation in the picture, I think we're still limited and restricted out, and we got one hand tied behind our back because our main priority is to secure the services of Mr. Thomas McGuan. John Caxor says, which of Rao or Butters fits into our side better? Rao would fill Mitchell's and get the ball out to the outside. Butters demands the ball like Nick. Does that suit our team? Matt Rao this year is looking looked like he's evolved his game. His contested possession rate has actually decreased compared to last year and even the year before that. So this is someone who averaged nearly 60% of his possessions in the contested form. He's clearly trying to break out of stoppages and get better looks going inside 50. So if Matt Rao can keep trending that direction, I think it's almost a no-brainer to try and secure Matt Rao. He's also worked with a sprint coach over the off-season / pre-season, so that's something that's helped his game. Yep, that's a good question, Paul. Who did he barrack for before he got drafted? Does anyone know? I'll put that question out, guys, if you haven't answered that yet, but that's a great question, Paul. End of next year, he goes as an unrestricted free agent. That would be, no. So, Rick, Zack Butters would be a restricted free agent. By next year, he would have served 9 years. And in most cases, you would be an unrestricted free agent. However, because he would be in the top 25% earnings of Port Adelaide, he would be deemed as a restricted free agent between year 9 and year 10. Beyond that, he's an unrestricted free agent. Similar to like Bruzzy, he's now served 10 years, I believe. This is his 10th year. So at the end of this year, regardless of whether he is in the top 25% earnings or not at Collingwood, because he served the full tenure of 10 years, he is considered an unrestricted free agent. Hipster Rob, has anyone mentioned other father-son picks for Collingwood? And you specifically mention Oscar Loney. I mentioned him in a stream maybe a couple weeks ago. I know he's on the Sandy Dragons list. I'm just checking now to see if he played on the weekend for Sandy Dragons. However, the app is cooked right now. Like for some reason, when I go into the fixture, it doesn't actually let me select the men's league. It's just taking me to the girls league. So I can't answer that question. I'm hoping maybe someone else can. John Caxor says, I do like the kismet of Nick convincing Houston to come to Collingwood, then Dan convincing Butters to come to Collingwood. Hey, there's a ripple effect. By the way, kismet, Never heard of that word in my life, so I'll just quietly search that up. Kismet meaning. The fate. What chance so the example they used, what chance did I stand against Kismet? Similar words, fate, destiny, fortune, and providence. I like that. Thank you, Mr. Caxos. That will go into might go into my vocabulary, maybe not. Might make me sound like a bit of a dweeb. So maybe I already use some big words that I feel iffy about using sometimes. I feel like a little doofus. Guys, let me know, by the way, in the comment section, is there any like delay in this stream? I know yesterday there was a few instances where the sound was robotic and whatnot. So just let me know if there's anything like that. Paul Mackay says Butters is a little bull, absolute gun. Shook us pretty hard, says Harry. Skipworth, Hayden Skipworth is the assistant coach. Thanks, Benny. Rick says proof of Oscar's knees were on show on the weekend. Wouldn't be touching him. Interesting. Reported in Herald Sun that we have offered Brazzy a 4-year deal on good money, but he wants 5 years. The feeling, though, is that he will re-sign. Is that recent? Let me check. Herald Sun. Thank you for that, Peter. You guys are so switched on. It's ridiculous. You guys. I thought I loved Collingwood, the football club. You guys, man, never failed to impress me. Let's see. Where is this Brazzy conversation? I can't see it, Peter. I'm looking at the app, the Herald Sun app. Let's see. I can't see anything on Brazzy Maynard. Oh, Trade Buzz. Okay, maybe it's in the Trade Buzz. Let's see. I believe it would be here. Collingwood is one club which has inquired amid its uncertainty about Darcy Cameron's future, but could not match the cash offered by St Kilda. That's in regards to Tom de Koning. Okay, so he's in our scope as well, it seems. Anything else? Eagles, Oscar Allen. They talk about Zack Butters and Collingwood, the Hawks draft capital, Harley Reid. Okay, so Pies coach pushes for mid-season trade period. Collingwood coach Craig McRae would love to see the AFL adopt a mid-season trade period. Of course, he's going to say that with what's happened with Reef McInnes. It's something, even without that happening, I think that would be great for us, for media, for fans, for clubs who are premiership fancies, only to fall short because of the injuries that they would have to have endured early in the season. I like that as a bit of a contingency for clubs. The mid-season draft is great, but you're not necessarily bringing in A-grade quality from the mid-season draft. Like, it's very, very hit and miss. Whereas if you have access to a mid-season draft period, trade period, that would be huge. McRae says he believes an added layer of movement between the clubs in the middle of the season could revitalise opportunities for sideline players while also bring a level of added off-field interest for fans, which is what I just mentioned. I think the game can actually grow even further to having mid-season trading. I think the game needs to have that excitement. He said, I got criticised last year when we had no rucks and the media thought it was about that, but it is about the game. It gives layers of excitement. Couldn't agree more. We will get to mid-season this year and it would be like, what about this guy who can't get a game with this side? I think there's a lot of upside and positivity in that with regard to mid-season trading. For every opportunity there is for bigger clubs to gain, which there's an argument against, there are also players who are not getting opportunity. We may give up more than what that player is valued at because we see opportunity now and others might not. The AFL considered introducing a mid-season trade window in 2025, but temporarily parked the suggestions for this year amid some concerns about reckless trading and the potential for the ladder to become more lopsided in the second half seasons. I think it's something that is inevitable. You have it in the Premier League, in the soccer, you have it in the NBA. I think it's just something that we will definitely see. So, okay, here we are. Pie for life or more years. Collingwood is prepared to hand Braden Maynard a 4-year deal on excellent money, but at this stage, is balking at offering the Premiership defender a 5-year deal, as reported by Herald Sun this just in. Okay. For me, what's the difference between a 4 or 5 year contract if you are the panel in the Collingwood helm deciding upon whether to offer the 4 or 5 years? It's Brazzy Maynard. Like, if there's anyone you throw an extra year onto a contract for what they've done for the club, for the availability that he's provided, for the spirit that he brings to the club beyond the game day into training. He's a leader of the club. Like, maybe you offer him the 4. Can you offer him 4 years and a contract clause to add an extra year if he's playing X amount of games in that final 4th year? Maybe that's something that could come into conversation. However, the Roos have their say here. The Roos confirmed on Sunday they had some interest in a tough backline player like Maynard, but football boss Todd Viney said they had not offered him a 6-year deal yet. So Collingwood are currently offering a 4-year deal on excellent money. He wants 5, but North are looking at potentially putting forth a 6-year deal, and we've been told, or we've heard, that could fall within the range or the realms of $1 million at some point throughout that career. A 4-year deal would see him playing on in those terms until 32, given he turns 29 in September, and he could conceivably strike another deal after the contract expires. What he has to weigh up is how much remaining a one-club pie will be worth to him across his entire life, given the sponsorship and marketing opportunities that come with remaining affiliated with the AFL Power Club. This is probably something we haven't spoken about enough. I don't think I've even mentioned it once. The fact that you also obviously have to also consider the players' values and what they value and what their in their ladder of life is. So if you remain at Collingwood at 4 or 5 years versus going to North for 6, you do lose out on the marketing opportunities that you get as a Collingwood player. So do you factor that in if you're Braden Maynard and his player management group? Like, the fact that if you remain at Collingwood, yeah, you might get a lesser contract. Yeah, it might be a year short of what you're hoping for. How much are you losing out if you leave Collingwood and give up those marketing opportunities, brand ambassador roles and little gigs that you get through social media for just purely being a Collingwood player? He certainly wouldn't get that at North Melbourne. So that's something that will have to come into conversation. But at the end of the day, if Braden Maynard is black and white about this and he just wants a longer contract and maybe he wants to play at the club that his brother works at and he wants to get a fresh experience at another club, be a part of a rebuild in a club that a team that is young and has a heap of talent, I'm sure the decision surrounding Luke Davies-Uniacke will also play a big role in whether Brazzy goes there. Like, if you're Brazzy Maynard, would you go there if LDU decides to leave? Because if your goal is to sort of be a part of the come up with North Melbourne, you would have to consider, or you'd have to think that Braden Maynard is looking at that picture with Luke Davies-Uniacke in there. But if he's extracted from that situation, does that make your ideal play going to North Melbourne? Does that change that? And that's that. That's Braden Maynard. Let's catch up on the comments. Harry Leonard said, it's good that there are so many players being talked about at the moment. Matt Rowell, Harley Reid, Zack Butters, Allen, all massive names. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the merry-go-round in all sports when it comes to acquiring certain players and these conversations. I mean, it's always going to be part of it. What I've learned over the journey of being on YouTube is in the off season, there's a period of time where it's just purely trade, draft, and free agency, and then there's this hunger for preseason content, and then in season, especially early on, when like the lay of the land hasn't been fully formulated and you don't know where your club is at necessarily, there's more. It's funny. There's more interest about the future rather than the present, and maybe that's just that's something that extends beyond like sport and the AFL world and all this sort of talk. We're always, we're never like fully in the now without getting philosophical. We're never fully in the now. We're always looking ahead, and we want something that's just out of reach. And I think that exists in the world of the AFL, where we're always looking for, all right, well, this is our list now. This is where we're at. We're 2-1, and we're chasing a premiership now, but we're already on the 1st of April at 6:46 p.m. We're already chewing the fat on who might be a part of Collingwood's makeup in the next few years. Paul Mackay says Allen or Ugle-Hagan. I would say, like, based on talent, Ugle-Hagan. Based on like where they're at mentally, without knowing exactly the ins and outs, you'd probably say Oscar Allen, right? And then you'd have to factor in like, what are you giving up trades wise and whatnot. Here we go. Okay. Paul Mackay says Raul and Dacos have a strong relationship from under 18s. Oscar Allen is another father-son, Oscar Loney, another father-son prospect at the Sandy Dragons. Rick says we can go into deficit in the draft either way, and it's not going to be a big issue. So we can still land a big fish, but that's coming from Toomey. Yeah, I haven't fully grasped the comprehension of going into a deficit in the draft. I've gotten my head around a lot of things around that over the last 12 months. That's something I probably haven't put enough time into when it comes to truly understanding that. Peter G says Raul looks fitter this year and quicker. I actually would want him more than an LDU. Stefanos says, are we forgetting Track might be in the picture also for next season? Absolutely not. He's someone whose name will trickle along throughout the year, especially as Melbourne continue to dwindle in form and their window of finals footy is further separating from them. So that will be another player that will come into contention in regards to coming or leaving and going to another club. FaZe asks, are you going to the game? I'm going. I'll be there. Can't wait. Apparently, we could see 100,000 there. First ever Thursday night game between Collingwood and Carlton. Give me that. Petrarca is signed till 2029. I think no chance. I mean, I think if he wants out and if he didn't already want out last year, I think Melbourne will honour that next year. Especially if they're going to go through a rebuild. Raul has said Collingwood was his first choice as a team to be drafted as well, says Peter. Apparently, it's going to rain during the Collingwood versus Carlton game. Is that so? Let's check the weather forecast. Let's quickly fact check that. I mean, that would definitely play into the hands of Carlton, who haven't been playing silky footy, and they're not a silky side. So anything that creates a scrappy contest, I think Carlton will offer or accept that and welcome that with open arms. 80% chance of rain, 1 to 5 millimeters. Mostly sunny morning, medium chances of showers, most likely in the afternoon and evening. Okay, keep a tab on that. Oh, he plays for Stingrays. Sorry, that's right, Peter. He did play 17 possessions. Okay. Champs, bad news. Zack Butters supported the Doggies growing up. Okay. Don't know if you'd want to go to a club like that anyways. I mean, yeah, just wouldn't, if you're going to come to Victoria, wouldn't you want to go to a big club? I don't know. Looks like Mackay will play on Thursday. Okay. That's means Billy Frampton is all but a certainty then. There you go. Good to hear, by the way, that Mackay's returning and he's got, big kahunas coming back after personal leave, coming back into the biggest game of Carlton's for Carlton in recent times. It's a must win. It's against the biggest club. Yeah, the club rivalries, obviously. So, yeah, he could have easily said, give me another week. Let me come back for West Coast and North. But to his credit, if he's coming back for the game against Collingwood, it just shows that, he's brave enough and has the courage that is needed to work with / against the anxieties that professional sport brings you. Paul Mackay says, Josh Fraser's son is 15 and 195 centimeters. I believe his name is Ted, and he plays in the under-16s Coates Talent League. Could be a bottom age under-18s player next year. Yep. And then you've got also the Rocker kids who are around that age bracket as well. Sam Samuels, how you going? Uh, might be on Fox Footy. Said okay. Just catching up to his comments, and then we'll move on to the press up for Craig McRae. Moshadama says, I would give him the 5, but a decreased salary for the 5th. Yeah, that's probably something that you could also factor into the negotiations, Moshadamas. I think mentioning a contract clause where in the 4th year, if you play X amount of games, you get that 5th year. I think is it called a player clause? I forget what it's called. When you have not a KPI, but something set in your contract where it says if you do this, you get this in the contract. Apparently, we're offering more money than North with the 4 years. Okay, says Peter. John Caxel says his management are playing hardball. Fair enough, though. I believe he'll stay to become a one club player and forever champion of the club and fans. That would be the fairy tale story where Brazil sails off into the sunset. Be interesting if he wins a flag. If we win a flag, what does that change in Brazil Maynard's mind moving forward? Does he want to stay? Like if you win another flag, two flags in 3 years, you're on the precipice of dubbing yourself and entrenching yourself into a monumental historical period of time for Collingwood. So if you win the flag this year, do you give up the potential of becoming a dynasty side and forever being a part of Collingwood folklore? I mean, he's already with the flag and all that sort of stuff, but to be a part of 3 flags, potentially, maybe that's something that he could factor in. Paul says, hard to leave a team that plays 17 or 18 games at the G in front of 60,000. 100%. All right, let's see. Can we... Mick says, Harley Reid is a trap. Hope he goes to Carlton, becomes another Jutta Cripper. 100 Brownlows, no flags. Love that. John says, I don't know what evidence there is that Hill wants to go to Western Australia, particularly when he went through so much effort to get to Victoria to be close to his family here. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I know he's from Western Australia. He's put his contract talks on hold, and that's as far as it goes at the moment, right? Dom Jacobelli says, has Collingwood checked out Presti's son playing as a key back at local footy? How old is he, Dom? Simon Prestigiacomo's son. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Mick says, I hope we go large and a tall Munster defender. All dynasty teams need one. Look, while there is a bit of a need to bring in another high-quality midfielder, I think above all, the main priority in the offseason at the end of this year is to secure a key defender, an elite key defender. Who have we talked about so far? We've spoken about Lee Kalia, Stephen May, Ryan Marrick, who's probably not built like a key defender, but he certainly has the height of a key defender. I can't remember who else we spoke about. My mind's gone blank. Let me check my notes. I've got notes from this. Let's see. Adam Tomlinson is there as well, of course. Ben Miller from Richmond we've spoken about. Sam Frost becomes delisted. There really aren't a lot of pre-agents and free agents and players running out of contract that are elite key defenders. We're going to have to pull something special out of our ass to get a player that is an elite key defender in the next couple of years. Contract triggers, says Moshadamas. Thank you. John Caxos asks, Mick, do you think we should go hard for Charlie Compton from North Melbourne? He's definitely a good player. I don't know if he's elite. He definitely probably has, you could say, has the potential to be. Yeah. He had a good season last year, didn't he, for North? Let's keep an eye on him throughout this year. Lockie, yo, bro, how are you? Hot pies, Brazzy won't go. I hope not. Dom says Riley Prestigiacomo is 18 years old. Okay. So was he not a part of the Coates Talent League system? Interesting. Usually the surname carries you a long way early in your junior career. You get some easier look-ins with that surname carrying you into the elite systems at junior level. So I'll write this down. I want to look into this after. I just out of curiosity, not that he might be a player that we go for, but Riley Prestigiacomo. I really struggle saying that. My brother gives me mad shit about pronouncing some of these players' surnames. Riley Presti Giacomo. I can't get the last bit wrong. Oh, right. I'm sorry. Mostradamus is legally his mark the other day was insane. I hope we have a good look at him. He's probably the most desirable key defender in the market right now, and not just for Collingwood. Clearly, St Kilda are going to come to the conversation. He's from Adelaide, so maybe Port Adelaide put their hand into the hat there as well. Put their little piece into the lucky dip. He's part of a really strong defensive backline that he just can't find a look in at the moment at GWS. FaZe, I said it could potentially rain. It could potentially rain Thursday evening. There is some forecasting for that. So hopefully, I'm not sure. I said it before. I'm not sure if you missed it though. Rick says O'Brien and Leper are cooking something at the moment. Can't wait to see who we land. Yeah, I mean, Shane O'Brien being a part of the recruitment team now, coming over from Geelong, I think he's going to be handy for the mid-season draft as well, because he's been a part of the VFL system at Geelong and whatnot. I mentioned yesterday, Kruger is playing in the backline for Geelong's VFL side, by the way. The Pies are asked. Peter G says the Pies are asking for permission to use our 2026 first round pick in this trade period, so we must be planning something. We're probably doing that because we haven't used our first round draft picks in the draft for the last 2 years. The rule is you need to use 2 every 4. So, yeah, I think that is why we're going to the AFL and seeking that exemption. FaZe, I am going to the game. I did say that before. I'm not sure if you missed it, but I am going to the game. Mick, on a side note, Anth, what do you think about Cochrane, 195 centimeters? Do you see a bright future, a sneaky debut chance this year, perhaps? Hey, in the first VFL game that he played, he was very good. He warmed into it, was very impressive. And for someone who I didn't get much time to make an observation on in the preseason because he was injured and missed training sessions from time to time, it was hard to get a look in. And when he was training, it was, just he didn't stand out. But I'll tell you what, he was very impressive, as too were Will Hayes and Charlie West. So early days, the early signs suggest that they're all looking good. Lockie Wiley says, chat's starting to get sick, bro. Great stuff. Hey, look, this is what we're trying to do. This is why I'm trying to go live most days, is just to keep bringing you guys back and we can have conversations and talk about I call it the you have to have something in your life that is considered the most important unimportant thing. So like unimportant. So like footy sport in general is, I use this term loosely when referencing it, but it's unimportant. Like, your personal life, work and family, that's the important stuff. Getting that right, that's your foundation. But you do need your sports, entertainment. You need your gaming. For those who don't know, I love playing PlayStation. Like I still find ways to fit that into my life. So these are the unimportant things in my life that I need. And it's funny because it's unimportant, but it's so important at the same time, which is why I say it's the most important. It's always important to have things that are unimportant in your life that are very important to you. I sound like an idiot sometimes. Our injury list is looking pretty healthy. Chris says any chance of Leakley coming to Collingwood potentially. And Dom says Cristiano Mardini, 196 centimeters key back, played Coates Talent League and Vic Metro. Let's add that to the list, Dom. Cristiano, one moment. Mardini. All right. Thank you. If there's any other names you guys want me to look into, just spit them out in the comment section and I'll do my best to look into them as well. Guys, let's keep going. Let's go to one moment. We're going to talk about some quotes from Fly's press conference today and some really interesting quotes to dive into. Mostradamus, welcome. Thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support and love having you in the chat. Like I said, guys, the more contribution from you guys, the easier it is to have these conversations flowing. So thanks for joining the channel membership, Nostradamus. Appreciate it. What's the wordplay on Nostradamus, by the way? Obviously, there's Nostradamus. Is Mosh like a part of your surname? In the meanwhile, let's go to Fly's press conference. So the first question that I want to raise in the press conference was the journo asking, how do you play an arch rival on their knees? Fly responds, we don't play opposition based on their ladder position, which is, just a nice little, it's a refreshing cliche. It's not something you always hear. He's definitely worded it in a different way. Other coaches would respond to that saying, in regards to playing a team that's not performing well, they'd probably say we play a team based on, actually, I don't have an answer for that, but I know there's other ways to respond to that. It certainly worded it a different way, but that was interesting. They're playing well in spurts, not long enough. Their hard at it game is unsustainable. Once it gets to the outside, their opposition just cooks them with their ball movement. And the elephant in the room at Carlton right now, one of the many elephants in their room, they'll be full of elephants. They're going to need a big room at some point. They just run out of legs. And because they're not possessing the ball, I mean, I'm pretty sure, guys, they would have a massive differential in uncontested possessions. And that's important to note. Like last year, guys, if you have been around the channel for a while now, we spoke about Collingwood's inability to control the tempo of the game. And even worse than that was we were conceding far too many possessions on the outside. We were letting teams dictate the tempo of the game, and they were hurting us with these uncontested possessions. There are times where you concede uncontested possessions and they go nowhere in their back half, or they build up to halfway. They fail to get a handball received to get the ball pierced into the forward line, and they opt to go long. That's when uncontested possessions can work into your favor. But specifically in Carlton's situation, let's have a look at their differential. Carlton are minus 8.7 in uncontested possessions. I mean, it's not too bad, to be fair. What's their average, though? What's their average? Let's see. Yeah, they're still middle of the pack. Like, I feel like against Footscray or Western Bulldogs, it wasn't pretty. Let's dive deep into that one. It probably strengthens my point about how they're good in spurts throughout the game. There are moments where they assert their dominance and they move the ball well, or they get some really good plays out of their centre bounce thanks to the likes of Tom De Koning and Paddy Cripps. But there are moments where they just get killed on the outside. And when in those times, they lose grasp of the game. So possessions, let's see. Is it here? Do we have it? Come on. They have disposals, but they don't have like contested possessions. Marks were similar, but I'm pretty sure in like the third quarter or the fourth quarter, Carlton got destroyed. I think they were minus 30 in the last quarter for uncontested possessions. I want to make sure that what I'm saying is true. So let me just get the stats here. Yeah, they ended up being minus 30 in uncontested possessions against Footscray. And we saw that ability from them against us. So that's why we're not all exactly surprised that the Bulldogs were able to do what they did against Carlton. So that's something that we can hopefully prey on at certain points throughout the game and use the great exponents by foot like Josh Dacos and Dan Houston. The next one, the journo asked, how do you cover Reef McInnes? Fly admittedly says we may not have a solution for the next 20-odd games, and that is a daunting thing to really soak in. It's a daunting quote. We may not have a solution in our key defender stocks for the next 20-odd games unless we strike gold in the mid-season draft. So now we are really hinging our premiership hopes on being extremely, extremely sound forward of center, creating a forward half game, and ensuring we don't have to defend running back to goal a great deal, which is something we struggled with incredibly last year. And the idea of Billy Frampton running back to goal, it's not going to work for the Pies. We're not going to defend like that. We don't have Tom Barris. We don't have Josh Battle. We don't have James Sicily. We don't have Sam Taylor. We don't have Jack Buckley. We don't have these players to do that, to defend well while being stretched on the rebound. So it's going to be something where we look back at and we go, oh, if we could have just got that right. But hopefully we rely on our system over personnel. That's what Fly likes to refer to a lot. And he speaks about that in the press conference about Sam Darcy. He says, look, he did well, but did he win Footscray of the game? No, nearly, but he didn't. Our system trumped that, and when we talk system, we can narrow that down in that game against Footscray. I think without the intercepting acumen of Jeremy Howe, we don't win that game. So, yeah, Darcy was playing one-on-one on Sam Darcy, but because of our system, because of the way we were able to allow Jeremy Howe to come across and make some really gutsy calls in the air, that really played a big part in us winning the game. So hopefully Billy Frampton won't stop us winning a grand final. And I really do wish Billy Frampton the best. I always say this. I try my best to preface these conversations about Billy Frampton by saying that I want him to do well. He did well for us in 2023. He did well for us early last year. Hopefully he can get back to that form again. When asked about Ed Allen, the Fly responds in saying, we want Ed Allen playing. He looks ready. He dominates the VFL. We have a real selection headache on the table here. So with that, and I'll mention one more quote. The journo one of the journos asked, what feels different compared to other years gone by? And he just says there's a different feel, different belief, and maybe that's attributed to adding new players to our list, and that's what we did in 2023. We topped up our list. We refreshed it with players who are coming to the club with a chip on their shoulder. You can go back to Patrick Lipinski. You can go back to Billy Frampton, Tom Mitchell, Bobby Hill. Like, these players come, they give you a fresh feel. You can say the same about now Dan Houston, Perryman, and Membry. All have chips on their own shoulders in different ways and bring a new vibe to the club. So there's that. And he also, with regards to the different feel and belief, like he mentioned, being able to put away a team like Port Adelaide. When have we ever been able to do that under Fly McRae? Good teams put away, the great teams in the history of the AFL demolish teams from time to time, multiple times in a year. And that plays a big role in boosting your percentage, and we need that. So hopefully we can do that to a few more teams this year. Regarding injuries, because we want to get to a predicted lineup so we can do that together, Dan Houston is available despite suffering a broken nose that he sustained on Sunday. So that's good. Oleg Markov is available for selection, so he'll probably come through the VFL against Coburg on Sunday. I'll be watching that. Checkers is available. Finlay McRae will be assessed this week as he returns from a shoulder injury. The midfield needs to get through training to determine his availability at VFL level. And Harvey Harrison, the forward, has developed expected swelling in his knee, resulting in a deload period. The 21-year-old can look forward to commencing running sessions in the next week, so he's just tapering back. Ash Johnson has successfully undergone the surgery of repair to his left fibula, and we'll get more clarity around his approximate time frame in due course. McInnes also successfully underwent a meniscus arthroscopic surgery after sustaining the ACL injury. Also, an approximate time frame will be communicated in due course. Tom Mitchell has hit a milestone in his recovery. The midfield commenced the running program this week after experiencing soreness in his right ankle, the opposing foot to where he experienced plantar fasciitis. The midfielder will focus on building up his running loads over the next fortnight. So if he is to be selected in the AFL side, it probably won't be until the back end of the second half of the year. Now, as we keep it rolling, guys, we'll go into a predicted lineup together. Bear with me. Quick catch up the comments. Sam Edmonds says Mackay is still doubtful for Thursday. Not my surname. I'm a metalhead. I'm a metalhead, so stems from that. Okay, interesting. Moshadamas. Yep, injury list. We're all over that phase. Moshadamas is kind of nervous about the Carlton game. We should smash them, but I've got a feeling they're going to come out swing 100%. I think I want to see the best version of Carlton come out there, and I want us to overcome that. Gives them no excuses. Nick Dacos is not out. Jeremy Howe is on AFL 360. Let us know what he says, Peter. Eliani, hi mate. Big game on Thursday. Go the Pies. Can't wait. Hope you well. Say hi to Connor Maria for me. Oh, Koch. Nick Dacos is playing on Thursday. Maybe that's some sort of troll. I'm not too sure where that comes from. All right. Let's do the predicted lineup for this week. Collingwood. Share screen. All right. Here we go. So let's do this together. Let's zoom in here. Shall we go more? Let's go back one. Can we do this? If we do that, how does that work? A little bit wider. All right, let's do that. All right, let's have a look. So, Darcy Moore at fullback. He will probably play on Charlie Curnow while also considering that Harry Mackay will be there. So, let's go Darcy Moore. Where are you, buddy? All right, yep. We'll go Jeremy Howe. Maybe he plays on Charlie Curnow from time to time. Darcy Moore goes on Mackay. Billy Frampton might be on the bench at times. In the other pocket, you can have an Isaac Quaynor, who might have an assignment on like a Jesse Motlop. Jesse Motlop is someone who has been performing really well while their team hasn't been going well. So I think Quaynor has some work to do there, and that will be a really good, entertaining sort of matchup to earmark going into Thursday night. Centre half back, let's put our man Billy Frampton, and then on the half back flanks, you're looking at Josh Dacos and Dan Houston. So Dan Houston is available despite the nose issue. And we're looking for Josh Dacos and Dan Houston to do some serious damage against a Carlton side who are struggling to deal with defending ball movement from their forward half coming out of Collingwood's back half. On the wing, you're probably looking at a Harry Perryman who will probably rotate through the halfback flank at some point. He hasn't seen much midfield time recently. We'll put the other Dacos there. That other Dacos is Nick. And then Lipinski, who played really well against Footscray, I felt, and has been putting in some good work over the last, the course of the preseason and the early stages of the year. Our high half forwards typically have been Lockie Schultz and Bo McCreary, who has been featuring in some centre bounce attendances as well. So don't be surprised if he comes into the midfield a little bit more against a hard nut inside heavy midfield, Carlton midfield side. So I guess who will they be playing on as your defensive halfbacks in Carlton? I mean, you've got players like Cowan, Zach Williams is not available. Adam Sard is there as well. Centre half forward, we can put a Membry there. Tim Membry. Forward pocket, usually you've got Bobby Hill and Jamie Elliott who have that aerial presence. And then full forward, you'll put Mick Stay. Where's Mick Stay? Now, obviously, you're probably going to have Brody Myercheck start there, so don't stress too much about this. And then we'll go Darcy Cameron, who's got a massive job against Tom de Koning. Like that will certainly dictate a lot of how the game pans out. And hopefully, I'm not looking for Darcy Cameron to win the contest necessarily. I'm just looking for him to have his own moments in certain phases throughout the game. Now, so you're probably putting the two old fellas, the buddies, the duo in Pendlebury and Steel Sidebottom. What do we do here? Yeah, all right. Select those two. Interchange. This is where it gets interesting. So Jack Chris will be there as well, of course. You've got Geordie to go. Guys, like, by the way, don't stress that these guys are on the bench. Just all that matters is they're selected in our starting 22. Who else have we got? Will Hoskin Elliott is available. He played in the VFL against Sydney a couple weeks ago. Oh, God, this is going to be tricky. Okay. My check goes there. And then, geez, this is where it gets really tough. So, with Reef McInnes out, I don't think Mason Cox gets selected as we've got Brody Mycheck in there. I think would be too tall. So, we go Ned Long here. And I think what we get is Ed Allen as the sub. Now, in Fly's presser, he mentioned he's dominating VFL. They want him in the side. They believe he's ready to take the next step at AFL level. He said it's a selection headache. I think he comes in. Now, that could either be Will Hoskin Elliott. That could either be, like we said, Ed Allen. I just don't see how Mason Cox fits into this tall side right now. He played well against Footscray, but just not well enough to keep out Brody Mycheck. And you can't have too many talls, and especially in a time in the AFL where the speed of ball movement and the speed of players at ground level is you just have to match that, if not be the faster team in general. But yeah, I reckon I've got Ed Allen as the sub, and you could also see a world where Ed Allen finds a starting position and Ned Long is the sub. That can also happen. However, we've seen Fly McRae rest older players and use them as a sub. So we've seen Pendlebury before. We saw Jeremy Howe come off early against Port. However, coming off the break, Braden Maynard as well. Hold on a minute. Okay. All right. Sorry. We've missed the cue here, says David. All right. So Braden Maynard, of course. Where are you? It gets even trickier because Markov is available as well. So, to me, Ned Long would have to be the sub. You can't drop him, and maybe Fly can. He's done some things like that in the past. I think Ed Allen still probably finds himself in the VFL with Markov, Hoskin Elliott, Ed Allen, Mason Cox. So, on the bright side, looking at a difficult scenario, we get some AFL listed players to help bring up those draftees and those VFL listed players and have a really strong VFL base. It's a good problem to have. But yeah, there's going to be players who are missing that would probably make other AFL starting 23s at this point. Certainly Mason Cox, certainly Will Hoskin Elliott, certainly Ed Allen. Markov would play for the likes of, probably like a West Coast or a North. He'd make those starting squads for now, for sure. It's a good list. It's good availability. The best ability is availability. So that's what we're going with. Darcy Moore, Jeremy Howe, Quaynor, Houston, Frampton, Dacos, Josh, Perryman, Nick Dacos, Patrick Lipinski, McCreary, Membry, Shooter, Bobby, McStay, Jamie Elliott, and then we got DC, Narak, Pendles, and Sidebottom in the middle. Crisp, DeGoey, Myercheck, Maynard, and like I said, don't worry about these guys being on interchange. I just saw other players before them. Doesn't mean they're not going to be starting. Like, these guys could all very well be starting on the field, right? And the sub will be Ned Long. I can't see Ed Allen being brought into the side in exchange for Ned Long. Like, that would just kill him. He's just signed a contract extension. You could argue he should be starting Ned Long. So for him to be dropped would be disappointing, wouldn't it? So that's that. That is that. I'll leave you guys with that. Are we happy with that? Anyhow, guys, an hour 15 has been the session tonight for the Pies Presser. Pretty happy with how that all went. I thank you guys for your contribution. Once again, thank you, Mostradamus, for becoming a member of the YouTube channel. Appreciate it. And if you guys aren't subscribed and you are watching this video and you enjoyed it, this live stream, do consider subscribing. It helps the channel, helps you get the notifications for these live streams in particular. and leave a like before you head out. And we'll see you guys for team selections and moving the magnets tomorrow at 5:45. Go Pies.